Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
From prime Barcelona to battered like Blythe, ladies and gentlemen, it is the Daily Newcastle podcast, and I'm your host, Michael Grahamslaw. Today, I'm joined by Nicola Pringle-Adams and Iain Nic. We'll start with you, Nick. How's it going?
I'm good. I am full of chocolate, barbecue food, and a hell of a lot of wine from over the weekend. But I'm good.
Typical Easter. Happy days. Are you the same, Ian? You doing well?
I'm doing well. I have been working today, but I loved the way you introduced Nicola and I like a pair of contestants on Pointless. Thank you,
That's
Michael.
my gimmick, baby. Lovely stuff. Now, I'm going to get straight into it on this pod because it's a bit of a comeback to Tactics Tuesday. I know that's been missing for a while, but I am going to start. 15 points, obviously, for Newcastle to play for. Just 2 points separate Newcastle in third, Villa in seventh. Obviously, Forest have that game in hand. But before we go into the Champions League and Europa League spots later in the pod, I want to go back to Aston Villa. So Villa, for me, I know, Ian, you spoke about it with Kev and Joe, but it's almost as if there's a certain way to play against Newcastle United. Fulham found it out, Bournemouth found it out, and Aston Villa definitely found it out. They were excellent. You keep the ball deep, you invite pressure, use the extra space to break the press. But what I do want to ask you is that a consequence of Newcastle's high-intensity pressing style, or is that something that we can fill the gaps with in the summer? Because every style of play has its positives and negatives. Is this just something we've got to look at and go, you know what, sometimes you are just going to get those big defeats? Ian, what do you think?
Well, first and foremost, I think the uplift that beating PSG gave Aston Villa and the carrot of getting back into the Champions League dangling there 2 days, 3 days later meant that whatever personnel or tactics we had tried, we would have struggled to get anything out of Aston Villa on Saturday. They were fantastic. I don't think it's our personnel that was wrong, particularly.
Would agree, yeah.
Maybe injuries would weaken us. I'd much prefer Sven Botman to be in there. I think if we had approached that game with a three central defenders approach like we did when we played away at Arsenal, we could have cut a lot of the problems out.
Mm-hmm.
We would have had to sit back and we would have been inviting them onto us, and then that's our game, the transition game. So perhaps it was a bit of tactical naivety. Maybe it's Eddie's plan A but no plan B because Tyndall doesn't want to change anything. For whatever reason, I think we approached that game for the whole 90 minutes incorrectly.
Very interesting you say that, and that does pan into the question I have next. But firstly, I want to go to you, Nicola. What do you think? Do you think defeats like Villa, Bournemouth, Fulham, where we're just simply outfought and the energy's just not there, is that part and parcel with the high-intensity playing style that Newcastle typically use, or do you think that could maybe be avoided with a few new signings in the summer?
Look, I think we all know that, we're not desperate for new signings, but we've spoke about it before on this pod where the squad rotation, we lack depth when obviously our substitutes come on. So I think, that will naturally be sorted with a few new additions in the summer. But I only caught up really on the game because I was out on Saturday, as you guys well know. I only really caught up on the game yesterday. I do have to give credit to Villa where it's due. They played very, very well. And like you say, it's games like that. Well, sometimes you just kind of have to give it to the other team. They just played well, and to be honest, they did outclass us. I don't think we necessarily played terrible, but you could definitely see there was some tiredness within the squad. And Kevin had asked this a couple of weeks ago, last week when it was a Wildcard Wednesday episode. He said, where do you think we could potentially lose points over these next three games? The Man U game, Crystal Palace and the Villa. And I said the Villa game. I think this would be our hardest test to date post sort of Carabao Cup final. And it was. And they deservedly got the result, and we got beat. But Yeah, I do agree with what Ian said. I think it's just one of those things, isn't it?
I
Yeah,
think
100%.
your question, Michael, is proven by how good Villa were
Mm.
in that they brought in Rashford, Marlon, and Asensio in January and
Yeah,
strengthened their squad.
yeah,
And look at the impact that being able to bring players like that off the bench after an hour had. We went from battling really hard, but definitely being, fighting a losing battle at 1-1 after an hour to 4-1
4-1.
within 10 minutes of the substitutions being made.
Yeah,
Massive, massive difference.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I think
yeah, I
Villa
mean,
are a good.
I
Sorry,
think
go
I
on.
think we would improve for strengthening both the quality and the depth of the squad, and fingers crossed that's what we have an opportunity for coming up in the summer.
Yeah, 100%. I think signings are something that's going to be big, but I also do think that it's perhaps unavoidable to have those kind of results when you play the way that Newcastle and Villa to an extent do. We play with such a high intensity style. Villa are exactly the same. They managed it against PSG, which, to be honest, we struggled with. I mean, we won the 4-1, but we changed things up. We altered it in that way. And to be honest, Villa looked fantastic. But we've seen in previous seasons, Spurs and Luton in the past are two that come straight to mind. Um, they've got past the playing style and they've actually managed to do well against Newcastle. But there is something that we've sort of adapted over the last two seasons to Eddie Howe, and it bodes into what you said earlier, Ian, of the Arsenal game where we did implement the low block, and we did frustrate them, hit them on the counter, and it's really good to do that against pacey offenses, and we've proven to be successful with it. Instead, as you said, we went toe to toe with our Aston Villa. Do you think Eddie Howe might have taken a different approach to the game beforehand, but with Jason Tyndall there, we just stuck to tried and tested what's already there rather than trying to tweak things too much without Eddie in the dugout? Nicola, what do you think?
I don't necessarily agree with that because as in Jason Tyndall said before in press conferences that he will speak to Eddie sort of pre-game and post-game, obviously, and he would have checked in with Eddie, pre-game, and they'd have gone over the tactics. I'm sure they would have gone over the tactics together as much as they obviously possibly could have with Eddie getting rest, obviously. So they would have had a game plan from the start. And they've worked together for so long now. What is it, 17 years? Their style of play and their game plans are probably very similar. So whilst I would have probably, we all want to see Eddie back on the sidelines. Do I think there would have been a different approach? I don't necessarily do. I think their game plan would have been the same. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've got that completely wrong. But yeah, I don't think Jason Tyndall would have. I don't think any differences would have been from Jason Tyndall to Eddie Howe. The substitutes would have probably been the same. They may have come a little bit earlier. I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't think there would have been too much of a change. I don't know if anyone agrees with that. That's just my opinion.
No, I
What
agree.
do you
I
think,
agree
Ian?
that. Yeah, I agree that I don't think there would have been any change. Um, Personally, think there should have been. I don't
Mm,
think that very effective low block and super intense transition play that we had to win at Arsenal should be limited to that one game. But when he had the option to do that, Howe went 1-1 against City and ended up 3 behind after half an hour, and
yeah.
never really got much of a kick against Liverpool when we lost 2-0 there. Now, I know there were key people out in that Liverpool match, so maybe that was just damage limitation and he didn't want to show our hand for the Carabao Cup final, so we could maybe ignore that one. But against opposition like City and Villa, when you're playing away from home, you've got to be super confident and on the top of your game to go toe to toe with them from the
Yeah.
start. Now,
100%.
I could see why Tyndall thought we were super confident and we were at the peak of our um, potential, super confident going in to play against Villa. So we went toe to toe with them. I just think that maybe Howe would have thought that's what they're going to expect and therefore just twisted it a little bit, shifted it a little bit. They were one up after 30 seconds because they knew exactly how we were lining up and they knew exactly what we were going to do. They did their tweaks to isolate Trippier and targeted Shah and put Watkins on him.
Yeah.
It was a winning tactic that they had before the game kicked off, and we never changed it. We didn't make any changes to try and address that. So I think maybe, yeah, I think it would have been the same if Eddie Howe had been there. They'd won. Was that 7 wins on the bounce, or going for the 7th win on the bounce?
Something like
Super
that, yeah.
confident.
Yeah.
Probably assuming like we would that Villa would be a bit tired, having got knocked out of the Champions League and played so hard. But it just, like I say, it just seemed to revitalise them. That's not how Villa have played in the Premier League for the rest of this season. Otherwise, they would be ahead of Liverpool.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
They were
true.
fantastic.
They were great.
It's the best performance I've seen against Newcastle from any side, to be honest, this season. And it's Bournemouth, the 4-1 at St James's is up there, but Villa could have had 7 or 8, and I don't think Newcastle fans would have had too many complaints, unfortunately. But it's just one game. It's out of the way, and to be honest, I want to put it behind me. So we're going to do that by going to Bioniq.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now. Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network.
He's done it again! Seriously, I genuinely, this isn't a rib. I've done it twice. Whenever it's me and Ian, it duplicates. Whenever it's me and someone else and me on my own, it doesn't duplicate. And
That's so funny.
It's nothing to do with Ian because Ian can't control it. It's my end, but the duplicate button or the repeat button in the top left corner isn't on. So yeah, Zencastr, you're usually fantastic, but please sort that one out. And we're going to put that behind us alongside the Villa game, and we're going to look at the running. So Brighton, Fulham, and Bournemouth have all fallen. They were all in the running for Europa League. Now they've just fallen a little short after some poor form. And it looks like top 7 will all get Champions League or Europa League, depending, well, exception is if Crystal Palace manage to win the FA Cup. Now, Ian, you and I have spoken about this already. We went through each fixture and gave our results with fantastic accuracy to begin with. Ultimately, it got a bit worse as we're going on, but we're not going to talk about that. But what we are going to do is I'm going to give you the name of each team except Liverpool and Arsenal, and I want you to tell me why they're going to finish Champions League or Europa League. And well, there isn't an easy position to start, but I think the one we'll all agree on is Chelsea. So I'll start with Ian, and then we'll go Nicola, and then we'll reverse the order. So Ian, where will Chelsea be playing in Europe next season? Champions League or Europa League football?
Europa League. They're most well. You see, the thing that changed slightly because they scored 2 goals in the last 10 minutes and beat Fulham yesterday. They were falling off a cliff. Their form since Christmas has been awful. I think we said yesterday 20 points from 16 games, which is about the same as what Manchester United have managed. It's just their fantastic start to the season that's got them so high up. But then they won, so maybe they're going to do what they did last year and win the last 6 games to cement their position. I can't see it. They've got to play at Newcastle, and I think if we take those 3 points off them, they will be only going for 12 more on top of what they have. They've got a match against Liverpool still as well, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
So I think Chelsea will be doing well to get 6 points, and they're already out of the top 5. And I think everyone in the top 5 will get more than 6 points. So they are definitely Europa League.
Yeah, I agree. Nick, do you agree?
Yeah, I would say Europa League. Their last game of the season is actually Forest, so that could be interesting. Because obviously they're on the same points currently, aren't they? Yeah, I can't see them getting a Champions League spot. I'm going for Europa League. They've got
Yeah.
a tough couple of fixtures as well as some Europa League fixtures mixed in still. So yeah, definitely Europa League.
Yeah, 100%. And to be fair, if they go on to win the Conference League, they'll be in the Europa League anyways. So
Sorry, yeah,
they're absolutely fine. Parma's out of form though. They are scraping together wins and they are getting results. They have improved a little bit from that tough run, but they do, as you say, have the toughest fixture list to this point. So they have no advantages on anyone else. Realistically, they're the one all three of us were going to see Europa. But this is where it gets interesting, because I'm going to go to Nottingham Forest. Obviously, they have a game in hand, which is on everyone, to be played tonight against Tottenham Hotspur. For those that are listening to this on Tuesday morning, you already know what's happened, but we don't. So what do we think about Forest? They seemed certain a few months back, but less so now. What do you think, Nick?
Guys, I think they're going to drop out altogether.
Of the Champions League or Europa League or Conference League?
What is it? Top 6?
So top 7 at the minute is likely to get Champions League or Europa League, unless Crystal Palace do a madness
and win the FA Cup.
Yeah.
I would love to see Forest back in the Champions League, unless it's between us and Newcastle, then they can get stuffed. But where do I think they're going to go? Do you know what? I think I'm going to put them in Champions League. I actually think they'll do it.
Oh,
I think they'll just get back together, and I think they'll just I think they'll get Champions League. They were sitting in third for so long.
Yeah, they've fallen off a little bit,
haven't they? But it is quite tight.
Oh yes, 100%. There's 2 points separating us in 7th. But what do you think, Ian, on Nottingham Forest?
I think tonight's game is critical for them. I think if they come back to form and win at Tottenham, then they've got some winnable games coming up after that. Brentford at home, Palace away, Leicester at home. That's 3 points. West Ham away, probably 3 points. Yeah. But if they lose tonight and that's 3 straight losses, suddenly all of those games start looking a lot tougher. They're already out.
100%.
Are they out of the top 6 now? After
No,
the results on the weekend,
they're
sixth now, aren't they? So they're
joint
out of the
points though
Champions
with
League
Chelsea
places.
and Villa.
Yeah. I am going to plump for them losing at Tottenham tonight and not coming back from it. So they'll finish 6th. And that last game of the season against Chelsea will be a playoff
Critical.
for 6th or 7th and completely meaningless.
They surely can't lose to Spurs. They can't lose to Spurs, surely. They're in 16th.
Spurs are full.
Spurs are full strength. Everyone.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Spurs with Solanke, Son. Son's apparently a rumour to be in the player of the season, which is mental. Solanke's back to form. They did get an important win in the Europa League against Frankfurt. So maybe, just maybe, Big Ange got them on the up. But I do have to agree, it is going to be tough for them, but I think the schedule is going to be good enough. We had one of you say Europa League, one of you say Champions League. I think the games they've got, I think they'll just scrape Champions League. But on that, the one that nobody would have said could fall in the Champions League or out of the Champions League and into the Europa League next season would be Manchester City. Now, they're not the team they used to be, obviously, but in the last 12 games, only Liverpool have picked up more points than the Citizens. So, Ian, Champions League or Europa League for Manchester City?
Right. Again, critical match tomorrow night at home to Villa.
Yeah, massive game.
Huge game.
They've got some hard games, They're at home to Villa. If Villa play like they did against us, that could be a Villa win.
Yeah, 100%.
But I think after that, they've got quite a benign run in, haven't they? They play Wolves, away at Southampton, home to Bournemouth, away at Fulham. Chelsea were at Fulham. Bournemouth have fallen off a cliff. I think City, even drawing against Villa, I think City will be Champions League, probably finishing 3rd.
No.
Unfortunately, I do agree. I can't see them picking up less than 10 points from the
Yeah,
15 remaining, which undoubtedly will secure Champions League. It could be one of those where, because every team has tough fixtures and Forest aren't in good form, that everyone kind of just seems like they don't want it and gets bad results. But
Mm.
before I say what I'm going to go with, Nicola, what do you think? Man City, Champions League or Europa League this season?
I would really love to see them not qualify for any. But they're gonna. I just don't like them. I'm sorry, I just don't like them. I wouldn't say they're gonna finish there because I think it's gonna be us. But yeah, they're gonna qualify for Champions League, aren't they? The fixture list is quite kind to them coming up. So yeah, they will be in the Champions League next season. But then hopefully they get found guilty of all their 900 charges, whatever it is, and then they can't play.
Get relegated. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we can all pray and we can all hope, but there is one last team we go to before Newcastle United, and that is the team that didn't play. We didn't play at the weekend. Nothing happened, but
behind
they're an
us.
incredible team in great form. Arguably the best performance I've seen this season from almost any team. Aston Villa. Their goal difference is considerably worse than the rest, so that's effectively a point less. But Nicola, we start with you. What do you think? Did Aston Villa take a Champions League spot this season?
I don't know. I think they deserve it.
Well,
That's helpful, isn't it?
I think
Just
the
yes.
I'm not
game
sure.
against Manchester City up in the air. Say they get a
Yeah.
point off that. They then have a home game against Fulham. That's 3 points. They play Tottenham at home. That's 3 points.
Yeah.
Then they're away at Bournemouth.
Mm,
Probably 3 points. Away at Man
yeah.
United. Like even Wolves did that. So Villa are 12 or 13 points. I think they are well and truly in the Champions League.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
Interesting, Nicola, because now all of your Champions League spots are taken, and the only one remaining is the one in the Europa League. Ian, the
No,
maths has
Yes.
worked out well. You've picked two for Europa League, but Nicola's picked all
damn it.
but one spot leaving Europa League. So, do you want to quickly change the Manchester City or Aston Villa one?
Yeah, Aston Villa can go into the Europa League pot. Thank you very much, because that's where they're sitting right now.
We went
Oh,
from third to,
damn it.
oh, I've run out of spots. But that just tells you how difficult this run is and how close everything is.
I didn't even keep
Ian,
count.
you've mentioned
What an idiot.
you've mentioned Villa there could potentially pick up 13 points. It wouldn't surprise anyone if they won every game. So they're a big, big risk to Newcastle United. You said that was Nottingham Forest and who was the other one? Oh, Chelsea was the other one you
Forest
thought
and
would drop
Chelsea.
into the Europa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that last game of the season between them is meaningless fixture. They'll both get Europa League.
Hopefully that
Because
is
I
the
think
case.
I'm not sure where Newcastle fit. We've got a point more than City. We've got 2 points more than Villa. Um, I think we win our three home games, and it's
So
down to whether we can do Arsenal again or not, as to whether we're third, fourth, or fifth. Because I think
yeah,
that Brighton game is, oh, I don't know. Brighton are a
We,
bogey team, but we really ought to be beating Brighton because they are so in and out at the moment.
João
yeah.
Pedro
I just
missing for
imagine
that
that
game as well.
I'm, yeah, he got sent off, didn't he? I'm kind of hoping that Eddie will come back, and that'll be a real shot in the arm for everybody when Eddie Howe turns up again. But also,
Yeah,
Sven Botman expected to be taking some part next week against Ipswich, so that could be him match fit for the last three games of the season, um, which would be excellent to have him against Chelsea, Arsenal, and Everton. I think would be a big plus.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
The fitness of those kind of players. Obviously, there's been rumours that Isak hasn't been 100% for the last few games as well. We're back to one game a week now, getting fitness up and getting those key players ready.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who they face. If Newcastle United are at 100% firing, we can beat anybody.
Absolutely.
But we've discussed Europa League and Champions League. Now I'm going to summon one of you to do the wonderful Zencastr ad. And I want the new one, which means I'm going to you, Nick.
No problem. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it is super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you are ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. That is the new one, right?
Hang on.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't it
like
get rid of away eyes?
Ah?
no.
Ian, you told me it got rid of away eyes.
That's because Nicola has done the 7-inch radio edit new Zencastr advert, and I did the full 12-inch disco special Zencastr advert, which was the original one. And that's what I mean about the second one. It just cuts all out. You can't say
Yeah.
that it
Well,
Bigger is
removes
better.
ums, ahs, your nose,
Well.
why eyes, and wellier bugger mans. It doesn't take that out.
Oh, dear me.
Well, it does if I say it does, but unfortunately, I like to keep all that in. So that's a sneak peek into our editing life. What I also want to get, well, we've also had a sneak peek into the end of the season. But what we haven't talked about is what position we might be in regards to players. Now, it's only April, but we've heard a lot about players leaving Newcastle United. And, well, I think game time given to some players over the last few games maybe is an indicator of what might happen to them in the summer. So I'm going to give you the 8 Newcastle players that have been linked with moves away. I haven't included John Ruddy, Mark Gillespie, etc., because we'd be here all night. But I want you to tell me what is going to happen to them this summer. Nick, you start this one, and then Ian will go Ian, and then back and forth again.
Oh, I'm scared.
And if there's any disagreements, I'll throw in my rusty 2p.
Let's go.
But first off, we'll start easy. Callum Wilson.
Got to go. Got to
Short
go.
and sweet. Ian.
Sorry, he's got to go. But he won't.
He won't.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, they won't extend Callum's contract. He's
Can't
not
do,
right,
can
is
they?
he? He's running around. I was impressed at 4-1 down how he was still trying to close down. I think his body's willing, or his mind is willing, but his body is not capable.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
Callum, go and get your. I really hope that he does get his 50th goal for Newcastle before the end of the season, though.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But I don't think that Callum Wilson's contract will be renewed because we've got a lovely shiny transfer pot to bring somebody like Cunha in, for example.
Oh,
Imagine.
lovely.
I would love Matthias Cunha.
Yeah, me
But
too.
we're not talking about incomings because that'll probably be a wild card Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
But I do agree on Callum Wilson. Great servant. If he gets 50 goals, maybe it'll be like Shearer's testimonial where there's a dodgy penalty given in the 90th minute and he runs onto the pitch. Callum Wilson gets his goodbye, and then maybe he moves on to Coventry City and gets them promoted next year over Sunderland and Borough.
Oh, yeah, come on.
That's perfect, I think.
We'll deal with that.
But yeah, Callum Wilson, probably out the door. Second up, another person whose contract is ending in the summer, Jamal Lascelles. Ian, what do you think?
I think Jamal Lascelles' contract will be extended.
Oh, what makes you say that?
Because he's a club captain. He's been such an integral part of it. If you remember, he was Rafa's right hand man. He's lived the last 10 years there, and he's not a bad centre half when he's fit and firing. We've written him off a couple of times, and he's come back and played half a season and done really well. I don't think they'd let him be injured the whole season with an ACL and then just let him go. I think they'll renew him, see what he's like next year. He's not really that old. He's certainly
No,
not Shah and
No,
Bird's
he's
age,
not.
is he? So there's plenty of life
no,
left
absolutely not.
in them. What we haven't seen, you see, what we're thinking of is the Jamal Lascelles that we know and love from the Stevie Bruce days, not the one who's had all of the improvement from having been coached by Eddie Howe for the last 3 years. I think we did see glimpses of that when he came in for the first half of last season. He played a lot better than what we were expecting, but then he got
True.
injured. So I think that keep Jamal Lascelles. That saves you 40 million for having to buy a second centre half.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I do think that to be coached by Eddie Howe, you have to be fit at some point. Unfortunately, and he's had more
It's only
he's had more stories for scuffles in the street than he has for playing well for Newcastle United recently. Unfortunately, but I do like Lascelles. I think I'll always remember that game after Southampton, which is the reason he became captain, where he came out and said, "Look, this isn't on. The attitude's shocking. Let's get into it." And we were a lot better after it. And arguably, his leadership's one of the reasons we got back to the Premier League, and we're now a top four Premier League club. So thank you very much, Jamal Lascelles. But to be honest, I potentially want to see him leave in the summer if we do have the kitty to replace him. What do you think, Nicola?
Oh God, I feel really bad. I actually agree with the pair of you. So I think Jamal Lascelles has been a great servant to the club over the years, and I do agree with it. I want to see him go. I think it's time that he goes. But do I think the club will get rid of him after having an ACL injury for what seems like the whole season? No, I don't. So I personally think he will probably remain at the club and could potentially, depending on his fitness levels, may go next window, as in the winter window.
Okay, makes sense.
Maybe.
I thought you were just going to firmly remain Swiss for the
I'm
entire
going to
day.
sit on the fence.
Callum Wilson, don't know. Jamal Lascelles, don't know. I agree with both of you. But
No, I said
if we're
Callum
in
Wilson
the
was going to go.
Champions League, Michael. If we are in the Champions League, he is, because of the age that he joined us. He's a homegrown player that we need for, like Paul Dummett,
okay.
for Champions League. So I think that's one other reason why his contract will be extended. They'll keep his leadership in the team. He'll probably stay club captain, but he doesn't necessarily have to play very many games to continue to fulfil a very important role that he's doing at the moment.
No, that's an excellent
Paul,
point.
Yeah,
Paul
very good
Dummett
point.
got a contract extension because of the Champions League qualification.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And to be honest, one that maybe I hadn't considered. Maybe we'll keep Mark Gillespie on in that case as well. But I want to move to one that's a bit more controversial, and I might do two at the same time here, actually. Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes, because two players who have been absolutely fantastic for Newcastle at different points over the course of this season. Gordon, there's been rumours of him going to Liverpool. They've got a huge kitty, from what I'm hearing, for next season. And Harvey Barnes, obviously, he's come good, but since he's joined, all the talk has been about him leaving. So, what do we think?
I think that Anthony Gordon they'll fight tooth and nail to keep him.
Yeah.
Fan favourite. He loves it here. Definitely Anthony Gordon, England's best left winger. Why would we sell him? Harvey Barnes, I think, has worked really hard and shown what he can do. Just as devastating down the left when he's playing with Tino Livramento in the last 5 or 6 games, which probably wins him another season. However, if a decent offer comes in for him, we may well be tempted to take 50 million for him, let's say,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good point.
and put a little bit more into the other positions that we're going to recruit for, because we do have good cover on the left. Joe Linton and Willock can play there. We've got the washing machine boy himself, Zanussi, that can come and play on the left hand side next year. He's had a few little cameos in cup matches and
yeah,
things, and he looks very exciting. Bit raw,
Mm,
but
yeah.
nevertheless, for a third choice left winger that could actually do something when he comes on. So we are well stocked in the left wing department.
yeah,
My gut
100%.
feel is they'll both still be there, but if somebody comes in and makes the right offer, I think he's tradable.
Yeah. I've heard, so the reason I ask in particular is because I've heard fans of Newcastle say on both sides that people would be willing to see both leave in the summer if offers of the right valuation came through. Because they think the valuation of Gordon, the 80 to 100 million, is a lot more than what he's worth. And some think Harvey Barnes, it's just a purple patch at the moment. Personally, my opinion is you've got two fantastic players there. if you can keep both of them, it shows you're serious and it shows that you're willing to push forward as a club. And
Yeah.
that's what Newcastle need right now. And speaking of what Newcastle need right now, Ian, I've already asked you this question.
He's irreplaceable. He's irreplaceable. He's the best striker in the world, I think. Although I'm not an expert on who's playing up front for in the Colombian leagues, but he's certainly the best striker in Europe, and we've got him. He's scored 25 goals in each of the last 2 seasons,
Yeah,
including the cup matches, and he's got the Champions League to play in next year. Fingers crossed. He's not going to want to go anywhere. I don't know if anybody would want to be spending the 150 million to buy him, but I don't think he wants to go. And we don't want to lose him, so it's a non-event, no discussion.
100%. Teams can't afford him, simple as that. And if they can, they'll break their entire balance for the summer. But one player that isn't going to break the balance, and probably will be the main topic of conversation, I think, here, is local boy Sean Longstaff. Because, of course, he meets the homegrown quota, and he's from Newcastle's academy, which I think is another quota that needs to be met. So, and there's not many of them out there that'll meet that quota. But Sean Longstaff, obviously, we have such a fantastic range of central midfielders, but does he stay or does he go in the summer? What do you think, Ian?
I don't think we need to recruit to get the strength and depth in the midfield. I do think we need to trade to improve the overall quality of the midfield. I think he gets sold, and I think Lewis Miley steps into the squad to be the academy homegrown midfield player that you're talking about in the Champions League squad. That's what I think, get 35 million for him from Everton, I believe, are sniffing. Leeds sniffing. Do you not think I get that much for him? Not this year.
I can't see 35 to 40, I'm afraid. I'd be happy with 10, if I'm honest.
Come on. Still in the prime of his career. Man U were offering 50. I guess yeah, this time last year he might have been a 30 million player, but he hasn't played so much this year. So maybe someone could pick him up for 20, 25. I would take it. I would take it and thank him. And he's going to support Newcastle all his life anyway.
But there are two other players I just want to quickly go. They're probably not, well, they're definitely not going to be sold, but I want to know if you would loan them out or keep them at the club for their development. And the first one is Lewis Miley. Do we keep him at the club? Ian, you said he'd take a Champions League spot, so I assume that means you would keep him at the club.
Got Champions League experience, haven't he? I don't think he missed.
True.
I think he played all 6 games at some in some position. So I would keep him. I'm gratified that Sandro has proven himself to be so world class in the midfield for this season. I think they held on to Lewis Miley in case that didn't work out, or in case Tonali or Bruno or Jolinton picked up an injury. But I
Yeah.
think he's, for me, he's the first change in midfield. He should be. If he's another year wiser, bigger, stronger next year, I think he'll get plenty of game time.
And the youngster without Champions League experience, but a lot of cup experience, William Osula. He brings vibes and W's in the chat, apparently. But what do you think, Ian? Does he bring what Newcastle are looking for?
I like him, and I don't think he's been chanced enough. I know he's raw, but Yakuba Minter was raw when Brighton put him in, and he's a great player.
Yeah,
Cole Palmer was raw when he came from the Manchester City reserves and went straight into the Chelsea first team. I
true.
don't mean Osula's as good as Cole Palmer, by the way, but we've seen flashes. He's huge,
We have.
strong, so quick, the fastest player in the squad, if you believe what the other players say.
Yeah,
If Wilson is gone, then absolutely we keep him, and I'm hoping that we can keep him almost as a first change for Isak.
yeah,
If we have a Mbuemo, for example, who could play right or centre forward, or Acuna, who can play midfield or centre forward, then maybe Yasula could be the first change in centre forward next season. I'd love to see him. get a little bit of composure. That's all he's missing. And that only comes through playing and not being super
100%.
excited.
Yeah, but I think the arguments we've gave there is also why some might have loaned him out. But I do agree with the lack of depth with Wilson leaving as well. I do think both Miley and Osula should be around in and around the first team. And then I wanted to end on the poor player that's probably, well, alongside Sean Longstaff, one of the most discussed, and that is Joe Willock. Once a record breaker for Newcastle United, but now just merely a squad player, unfortunately. But what do we think? Ian, we'll start with you. Is Joe Willock going to stay in the summer, or do we think his time is up at Newcastle United?
I think he's a next level up from Sean Longstaff. I don't think we trade him just to improve the quality of the midfield.
Yeah.
But I think it was Kev who observed last night that he needs to be in the team although he has come on and changed games once or twice before, but that's not playing to his strengths. So it'll be up to Joe Willock, won't it? If he's sick of being the bit part player all of this season, and he must be frustrated, maybe
Yeah.
he'll want to move on, and then we can shake hands and wish him all the best where he goes to. But I would keep him. I think he's a great player. I'm thinking more of a replacement when somebody's injured or
Yeah,
suspended,
100%.
rather than someone to come on for the last 20 minutes, because although he does a job doing that, I don't think that's where we see him at his most effective.
That's all from our show this afternoon. We hope you've enjoyed, and
It's injury
it's not
time,
all.
Michael. Injury time.
Fergie time has begun.
What? Maybe I shouldn't do this, but I would have thought I thought you would have had Target in there. He's got to
I
be
just,
sold, hasn't he?
I
We're
just
just
assumed he
assuming
was
he's going to
off.
be sold.
He was in there with John Ruddy and Mark Gillespie, I'm afraid.
All right, okay. What about Kraft?
But yes, Kraft, I think, stay. I haven't seen him linked with anyone else, and I think he's happy to stay. Unless you think he should be sold.
No, I'm not going to pick on Kraft.
I love
I would have
Kraft.
done a couple of years ago. I think he's somebody else who's really improved under Eddie Howe, and we haven't really seen a lot of it. But every time he's come on, he's not let us down. He looks
No,
very, very
absolutely not.
solid.
Yeah, I think he's one of those players that is always going to be a squad player, improve. And then when it comes for him to leave, because let's be honest, he's not going to get in another Champions League squad. He'll go back to Sweden. He'll do something like Martin Agger did and go back to Bromby. And hopefully, Martin Agger, Daniel Agger. I don't know why I'm thinking. I thought put Martin Skirtle and Daniel Agger together. As you can tell, I'm not a Liverpool fan. I hate them. And on that note, well, Newcastle are better than Liverpool. See you later.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.